Why are architects so rude? Your specification managers turn up for an architect's appointment and the architect isn't there. Why not? Why is that so rude? Maybe they've taken months to organise the meeting. Maybe they've driven for hours, miles, just to get there, and then it's just a waste of time and they end up speaking to the practice manager. Well, my name is Sue Butcher, and before I became a communications consultant for construction product manufacturers, I used to run architect practices, and I was the gatekeeper, the person who you had to speak to on the phone. So I'm going to talk to you about why architects miss appointments, why your sales techniques are not working, and what you can do about it. Let's start with a story. I used to answer the phone for an architect in a small practice in a provincial town, and I used to work for an architect who had a pathological fear of saying yes or no, which was something that I could manage as long as I didn't have him answer the phone. Because as soon as he answered the phone, he'd pick up to a salesperson from a manufacturing company and agree to meet them. And then, of course, he wouldn't be there when they arrived, and I would have to disappoint them and let them down gently. So I realised that there's something going on here, and it was worth explaining to manufacturers who may not understand the culture of architects and their practices. So let's think about the 3 reasons why architects are so rude when it comes to appointments. Now, the first one is they're really busy. And you've probably heard about the project that you want to talk to them about when it comes up for a planning application and a named person is listed as the applicant, which is quite often the architect if it's an architectural practice involved. Now, for any project where a planning application has been made, there may be hundreds of different products under consideration from dozens and dozens of different manufacturers. And as soon as their email address and phone number gets into the public domain, you see it on Glenigan, for example, then many of those manufacturers pick up the phone and call the architect trying to get an appointment. So they're not only too busy, but they definitely do not have time to talk to you and the next guy and the next guy and the next guy after that. Their important job is to do fee earning work. So if you're a small architect's practice, and over 80% of architects' practices are fewer than 10 people, then the first thing you do once you get some money in the bank is to hire someone to answer the phone for you so you can actually get on with your day job. So that's number 1. They're going to be too busy. And number 2 is they don't like sales. They don't actually want to talk to you because they don't want to be sold to. It's just not something that they're comfortable with. And I know an awful lot of architects, and a lot of them will tell you that. And it's partly because they're busy, and it's partly because they just don't like the experience. It's not something they enjoy. But it's quite common for them, under a bit of pressure, to agree to meet you, or agree or give you an email address to send something to, because they want to get you off the phone. They just don't have the time and they want to get rid of you. And the easiest way to get rid of you is to say yes and then deal with it later. So that's number 2. They don't like sales. And they're never going to like sales. That's just how it is. And the third reason is because it's never the right time for you to talk to them. Not if you are doing the decision about when the right time is. So you might get brought in at planning stage because that's when the project has entered the public domain. But that's usually too soon, and it's often where they're getting a lot of calls. So you might actually think about breaking an existing spec at the value engineering stage. Or you might be brought on site when there's a problem with an existing product, or a delivery for an existing product and a substitution needs to be made. But all of those incidences, all of those opportunities for the architect to talk to a product manufacturer are not necessarily the right time, and you're not going to know about them unless somebody gets in touch with you. So actually, if you want to approach an architect, it's never the right time to approach them, because you've no idea when they're thinking about your part of the project, the system that you're involved in, the interiors, the exteriors, etc. So the ideal time to approach an architect is before a project even starts. And that's why we're talking so much about early involvement, because of course, if you want to design a project, then there are a lot of materials and a lot of products and systems you want to be thinking about right at the beginning. But of course, before the project has got to planning, as a manufacturer, you have no idea about that. So you want to cultivate a relationship with an architect back in the past so that they'll approach you when the time is right. So that's the third time. It's never going to be the right time to approach an architect yourself. So what I'm saying here is that the old sales techniques, cold calling, emailing, doorstepping, and I've seen a lot of that even now, they just don't work when you don't know when the right time to talk to an architect is. So we have to think about new techniques. Now, the technique of pull marketing rather than push marketing, which is what the old techniques are, it's not actually very new. I mean, David Meerman Scott was writing about it in 2011. I was talking about it in 2012. But we still have a lot of this old-fashioned methods of connecting with architects going on. So we need to think about new techniques and techniques that involve the internet, that involve the referrals process that architects use themselves, that involve introductions between people who know you and people who don't know you as well. So don't push yourself. And I'll give you another story just to reinforce this. I once had a conversation with a young architect working in a small practice in London, and told him about the business about people turning up at architects' practices and for appointments that didn't exist. And he said, "Oh, I can do one more than that. We have a guy in the office called Alex. He makes all our planning submissions. His email address is alex@nameofpractice.co.uk, and he's rather quiet because he doesn't exist. When we pick up the phone and somebody's pestering us about a project, we say, 'Oh, you'll need to talk to Alex. And no, he's not here right now. I'll give you his email address.' And the email address goes into an inbox that is never checked because nobody is bothered. It's just a way of getting rid of you. So if you're managing a team of spec managers and they're wasting all their time phoning people, getting the names of people and doorstepping people and cold calling people, then you're probably wasting an awful lot of your sales budget. So don't push yourself on architects because they're just not going to have the time. Get them to come to you instead. Now that sounds like a bit too good to be true. I mean, it would be nice, wouldn't it, if they just turned up? But if that isn't what's happening, if architects aren't picking up the phone and calling and they're not emailing and completing forms on your website, maybe it's time to start thinking about your marketing strategy and whether that actually needs some work. So if this all sounds familiar, if you've had that experience, if it's happening to your team, maybe share this message with colleagues and see what they think about it. And if you want to talk, then why not get in touch? There'll be a link to book a call with me, and I'm happy to give you my 5 cents.